הושיע את עמך וברך את נחלתך אורם 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 ונשם עד העולם הושיע את עמך וברך את נחלתך אורם 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 ונשם עד העולם נחלתך אורם 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 ונשם עד העולם הושיע את עמך וברך את נחלתך אורם 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 ונשם עד העולם הושיע את עמך וברך את נחלתך אורם 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 ונשם עד העולם
My name is Rabbi David Katz. I'm the Executive Director of Israel Heritage Foundation. Today, in the Hebrew calendar, is the 24th day of Adar, a very happy month. Adar base. But it's a very happy day for Israel Heritage Foundation. 2 years ago, on the 24th day of Adar, we had our first event with former Secretary of State, Mr. Pompeo. We had it here in New York City. Our first event started off so beautiful, and thank God, 17 events later, we see a lot of Siyata Shemaya, a lot of help of Hashem. Look, it's raining outside, it's almost snowing. And we got together a beautiful, beautiful crowd tonight. And it's not the number, it's the most special and most important people that could get together under one roof. I won't introduce everybody here because everybody knows and everybody here himself is a figure. But I want to thank Claudia for coming all the way from... how far was your flight?
An hour.
45 minutes. Well, by car in New York it's much longer.
Car from east to west be an hour.
4.5 hours.
2 hours drive.
We thank Claudia for coming very much. I don't think there's any congressperson in Washington, D.C. who did as much as Claudia did in the last few months, special with a big presentation about Judea and Samaria, which is important for every Jewish person. Whenever people from Judea and Samaria come to the United States, I make sure that they come to our organization. We have dinner together with them. And it's unbelievable how people are living there and the danger over there. And instead of the United States sending 50,000 American army people to be there to watch over the people in Israel, they're fighting it, negotiating it, and we needed a real voice in DC, and thank God, Claudia was the person, she was the messenger of Hashem, who started this beautiful idea, and hopefully this idea will grow more and more, and the Jewish people in Israel will stay safe forever, and we're waiting for Mashiach to come very soon, but Mashiach wants to come to us safe in Israel also. And the more safe Israel is, the more closer we can be to Hashem, the more mitzvahs we can do. You know, I tell everybody, we live in America, which America is a place of freedom. I walk out every morning with my long jacket, my hat, with my tefillin, with my talis. I'm not embarrassed. This is what America is all about. America is that I can be proud of being a Jewish person. My children could be in Jewish yeshivas. We feel as Shabbos in our neighborhood. We feel a holiday in our neighborhood. We just had a holiday of Purim. We felt Purim all over New York. Baruch Hashem, Hashem gave us the United States, which is a place that we could feel at home. And I always say that our people, our brothers in Israel, should feel the same in their own home. Israel is a Jewish state, and people should be able to walk Friday night after the Shabbos meal and not get worried about rockets over their head or guns or anything else what these people are doing to the Jewish people for no reason in the world, and nobody's condemning it. So Baruch Hashem, thank you Hashem, that we have a very wonderful person in DC who is advocating, and she commits herself to advocate. And may the blessings of Israel come upon Claudia and your whole family. Israel is a place of blessings, and whoever sticks up for Israel, Israel will stick up for them.
Amen.
At this time, I would like to invite and call up my good friend, the honorary chairman of Israel Heritage Foundation, Mr. Jonathan Burkhan.
Thank you. Thank you. By the way, Claudia is an amazing woman. Claudia, she got elected to Congress. Then she lost and came back and won. She's like the Jews. They keep fighting. They keep fighting. So Claudia, God bless Claudia. Claudia, how many Congress people lose and come back? Very few.
Oh, no, 109.
Anyway, I just want to tell everyone. My doctor. Okay. All right. I just want to say something briefly. Please, everyone. Rabbi. 7 years ago, can you move over? Okay, we good. 7 years ago, I met Dr. Frager at the Zionist Organization of America event. And Dr. Frager really changed my life because he brought me to Israel with Yisrael. Right there, right? Yisrael, remember that trip? 2017. And I didn't even know what Kaddish was. And Dr. Frager is saying Kaddish, Dr. Josef Frager, his name. So my father passed away February 22nd. And Rabbi Katz, who I love, came to the hospital to be with my father right before he passed away. But what I didn't know, till days after my father died, that there was a man who used to come help my dad the last couple months put these percussion, what are they called? What type of socks? Percussion socks? Compression socks when you get older. So this guy in the building would put on these compression socks, and my dad fell and it's hit his head. He's bleeding on the back of the head. They're wheeling him away. And this is the last words he ever said in my parents' building. The guy's name was Joseph. He goes, "Thank you, Joseph, for everything you've done for me." He wasn't Jewish, by the way. So Joseph Frager's changed my life. Rabbi Katz and my business partner, Brian, thank you for being there. All my phone calls, thank you, Brian. And Yisrael. But I just want to thank this group. We're going to Israel May 15th. Vladimir is coming. James Higgins better come, or we're going to send him to Siberia. And we have someone who actually was in a gulag, which is amazing. Stand up, please, sir. Stand up. And we want you to speak at some point. Who's going to speak? You want to say something now? Okay. We want you to come up here. Come up here. You're going to say something. Come up here now. Come up here. So I want to thank everyone for being here, and for my new friend Costas for coming. And it's just incredible to see everyone here, and we're going to have an incredible trip to Israel. And that's all I have to say for now. Thank you so much. Rabbi, you introduce him up here. Just tell your full name and your story. I want to hear a couple minutes talk about the gulag.
Are you okay?
Okay.
My name is Yosef Mendelevich, originally from Riga, Latvia. That time it was a part of Soviet Union. We tried to get permission to leave Soviet Union for Israel, and we repeatedly refused. It was in the 60s. We established an underground Jewish movement to fight for our human Jewish rights in Soviet Union. But we felt it is not enough. We have to fight openly against the Soviet regime. So we organized a group that tried to hijack a Soviet airplane and to demonstrate the situation of Soviet Jewry, that we are ready to sacrifice our life for freedom, for there is no other way to get freedom for a Soviet citizen, specifically for the Soviet Jew. Then we were arrested on the spot, for we were watched by KGB. We were arrested in the airport, and I was expected death penalty. Instead, I got 15 years of imprisonment for high treason, 15-year imprisonment of harming state security, and 7 years imprisonment for my Jewish activities. And then it started here, as you know. It was the beginning of Let My People Go movement in 1970. So very soon, under the heavy pressure of American public and specifically American Jewry, they cut my term to 12 years, and I spent there almost 11 years. You know, it was a very important part of my life when I got to know that immediately after my trial, people start leaving Soviet Union. Means in 1971, for the first time in the history of Soviet Union, some 15,000 Jews left. 15,000 Jews left Soviet Union. Next year it was only 30,000. A year later, 35,000. And then, knowing that I have to spend all my life in the prison, I thank you, God, for the privilege to bring freedom to other people. And I told, I am ready to stay in a prison as much as needed, just to get more and more people out. So finally, they expelled me out from Soviet Union after 11 years of imprisonment. That time, already 200,000 Jews, and not specifically Jewish people, left Soviet Union. It was a real breakthrough in an Iron Curtain. And I remember I told to the KGB officers that brought me to the airport to throw me away, I told, officer, you arrested us 11 years ago to prevent our nation to be free. Now you bought me a ticket just to get rid of me. You have to release every Jew, every citizen. Otherwise, your empire will break down. And it happened, you know, only very soon after my release, the Soviet empire collapsed and people became free. Thank you.
We have a very special guest from Florida tonight, a friend that I met on Twitter. Twitter is a great platform. X, I'm sorry, it's called X, it's a new name. I would call it Czech. And it does a lot. Thank God we're up to almost 10,000 followers on Twitter. And people see the big Kiddush Hashem, how much we do for Israel, advocates for Israel and the Jewish nation and the people here in the United States. One of my close friends who I got to know was Mr. Brian Leib, who was a very, very big influence on social media. And he was a matchmaker tonight. He said, Rabbi Katz, would you organization host Claudia? And I spoke to Dr. Frager, and Frager says, what? Me and Claudia go back so many years ago, and thank God tonight it happened. So, Brian, please come up to say a few words and introduce yourself. Let's take a first picture together, me and beautiful.
Okay, thank you very much, Rabbi Katz. Thank you everyone for coming here this evening. I'm going to keep this very short and sweet because I want everyone to hear from Claudia. You'll hear a lot of things tonight about Claudia's support for Israel, Claudia's support for the Jewish people, her Judean Samaria Act that is really unheard of for a member of Congress to actually introduce, but she did it. But how Claudia and I first met was actually on the Iran issue. And she has been a stalwart supporter of pushing back against the murderous Iranian regime, as we know is the biggest existential threat that Israel has, and I think even more so right now than ever before. So Claudia has been fighting the good fight against the Iranian regime. She's been fighting to support the Jewish people in her district in New York, in all throughout America, and also in the state of Israel. And we've got to really do what we can to support our friends in Congress, because if I'm being honest with you guys, we don't really have a lot. Okay, it's diminishing day by day by day, but not Claudia. Claudia, you have stood with Israel, you have stood with the Jewish people You have stood against the biggest existential threat that Israel has throughout your entire career. And I am grateful for all of that, but I'm grateful for our friendship. I'm grateful that you came here tonight and you're able to meet so many other people. So thank you, Claudia, to you. Thank you to the Israel Heritage Foundation. And yeah, thanks for being here. Thank you.
And they'll go around getting everybody's orders now, enjoy the food a little bit, and then we will continue with the program. Thank you so much. We have 15 minutes till the main course comes up. We have 15 minutes till the main course comes up, and I'd like to call up, before Dr. Schrager will introduce our special guest, a very special guest from Lawrence. What's he doing? Oh, Manhattan, Florida.
Wherever.
Mr. Sally Stern from Norpac.
Oh, he's got to take pictures. So first of all, thank you for asking me to speak, be it on the cuff, and I'm honored to be in the presence of Mr. Mendelevich. What you've done for the world, the Jewish people, and what you endured to do it is something that none of us can even imagine. So, kudos to you. I want to say thank you to Joe and to the Rabbi, and of course all the people I know here. Jonathan I know for many years, and I'll just say a few and my wife Trudy, who is we are co-presidents of NORPAC, but there is a president and then there's a co. And we all know who the co is. And Larry and Esther come to our house often or come to our events often can attest to that.
You haven't paid rent once yet.
And of course to Congresswoman Tierney, thank you very much. And I want Tenny, I'm sorry. Tenny, there you go. I have to disagree with my friend from Florida. And I will tell you why. He mentioned how the Congresswoman was very helpful in the Iran issue, which you call the biggest threat to the state of Israel. That is not true. That is the second. The biggest threat to the state of Israel is the continued support of the United States government. Without the support of the United States government, Israel does not exist. We don't get the vetoes in the United Nations, we don't get the weapons, we don't get the financial support, we don't get anything. We can take on Iran with the help of the United States. Israel can defend itself, Israel can thrive on its own with the support of the United States government. We don't have that support. That is something that is slipping. We all see it slipping. We're all fighting that slippage. We do in New York, you do, Jonathan does. And it is the biggest threat to the United States. We need more than friends. And that's why the Congresswoman is here. What we need are champions in Congress. People who get up and will scream at the top of their lungs on these issues. There are very few champions for Israel right now, and the Congresswoman is one of them. And they come in all sizes and shapes, and there's nothing more important now because particularly, this is a different audience, but particularly the Democratic Party, we see extreme slippage, we see fear, we see, I don't know what we see. For the first 30 or 60 days after October 7th, you heard support for Israel. You heard qualifications on Hamas-related numbers. You heard all sorts of stuff that you don't hear anymore. Now all you see is images, doctored or not, statistics, truthful or not, and the support for Israel is suffering to that. So for that, I have to thank the Congresswoman. I have to thank everybody in this room because we all work together. Because Israel, the Jews, and Israel have always been the canary in the coal mine. What impacts Israel today will impact the rest of the world tomorrow. And that the fight that we fight, that the Israelis are fighting in Israel, is the fight that we will not have to fight here if we're lucky. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stern. We have the custom, we sing Eishes Chayil every Friday night. every Friday night the husband sings their praise for the beautiful Shabbos that the wife brought in, cooking, baking. But I guess Mr. Stern sings the praise every night. His wife and him work together. They advocate. They do so much for Jewish people. I would like to call upon my mentor, my rabbi, Dr. Rabbi, I call him, Rabbi Dr. Josef Reger. He will introduce the Congresswoman, and we will both present a beautiful gift tonight to the Congresswoman for the beautiful work as she has done. Dr. Reger, are you ready? We all know that Israel is a place where the blessings come. And we decided to give a cup full of blessings to the Congresswoman, and may God bless her and her family, a long life, a sweet life, and a gorgeous life. She has done so much for Israel. I can pray there. Please give it over to the Congresswoman.
Up there, no, give it to her up there. I think we should give it to her up there.
I'll read it for you.
It's in English.
It's in English.
Okay.
It's in English.
All right. Israel Heritage Foundation presents this cup of blessings. Congresswoman Klawdii Tini on April 3rd, 2024, 24th of honor is Shaney, second of honor, 5784, in recognition of her unwavering dedication and heroic efforts advocating for the Jewish community and the state of Israel. Her tireless work has left a profound impact, and this honor serves as a testament to her unshakable commitment to promoting peace, understanding, and unity. Thank you.
One more picture.
Wear it well.
One more picture.
Wear it well.
Okay.
James, get up. James, get up. James. Come in the pictures. We need James in the picture also. We want James in the picture.
Come on, James. Smile big.
Okay, you ready? Mazel tov. You gonna put it over here? And I can say you can continue.
I want to thank everyone for coming in this storm. You know, it's really, you went out of your way for us and for the Congresswoman, and we appreciate it. Yisrael Stefanski, I don't know if the rabbi mentioned, he came all the way from Israel. He flew in from Israel just to be here tonight. So that's how special this Congresswoman is. And I have to, obviously, everyone has said, the champion of champions, Rabbi Mendelevich, it's such an incredible honor. Stanley mentioned it, to have such a rare individual in our midst. If you're talking about, we want to go biblical, this is biblical right here. This is biblical. You can't get more biblical than this. This man, what he went through, and he doesn't consider it a major undertaking, but we know that what he went through in the Gulag and how he brought freedom to the Jews is as great as Moses did in Egypt. I mean, it's almost on par, but people don't make those comparisons. But I can make the comparison because, truthfully, Paro was easier than all of the leaders of the KGB and everybody else. I think Paro was a lot easier. So he escaped Russia, and he brought, Sharansky himself says that it was because of him that he became a refusenik. If it hadn't been for Rabbi Yosef Mendelevich, this wouldn't have happened. So he opened up the Sea of Reeds, and opened up the Sea of Reeds for the rest of the Jews to come, the millions that went to Israel and to America. Very, very significant. A lot of you will tell you that Russian Jews in America vote Republican. So it's a very significant voting bloc for you and for everyone who's on that side of the aisle. But I do want to say, I mean, we went to Israel together, and I told you that you were going to win because you went to Israel. And I tell everyone who wants to go into Congress and Senate or whatever, you go to Israel, you get the blessings, and she had the toughest fight of any congresswoman or any congressman of all time. I mean, I thought it was 12 votes. I'm glad it was yours.
It was 109.
It was 109. Okay.
At one
Okay.
point it was 12.
It was,
but I ended up pushing
I
out
was
to
saying
109.
12 votes because it's 12 tribes of Israel,
Landslide.
and I was trying to tell you that that's why it happened.
Miller
But-
Meeks won by 5, right?
6.
6.
Okay, so somebody beat her. But the truth is, the next time around, she just won on a landslide. And every time around now, she's going to win a landslide because she's the biggest supporter we have of Israel. And not only Israel, it's not only Israel. They have got to become more sophisticated in Congress. They've got to realize that Claudia is sophisticated. She knows what Yehuda and Shomron are. She knows what Judea and Samaria. She knows where the biblical heartland of the Jewish people happens to be. She saw it firsthand. She came. That is why we do these missions. That's why I recommend, and I'm sure all of you do the same, wherever you can. I know that the Stearns have over 80 times in the past 5 years or whatever hosted. I mean, last time was Joni Ernst, and the time before was Ted Cruz, and the time before that, you know, I mean, basically they run the largest PAC that I would say that supports all of the values that we Orthodox Jews generally support, which is, of course, family values, fighting anti-Semitism, which, by the way, that's another one of these fights that we need you for. James Higgins and I were discussing it. This is unbelievable what we're facing now as Jews in America, and it's only people like you who can help us, because otherwise we're not going to make it here. We're not going to make it. They've just raised to such a level of incredible, loud, and the viciousness has become so enormous, and it's contagious, and that's the problem. It's contagious, and unless it's cut somewhere fast, we're not going to make it. And it's not only in Israel. Israel has its own issues, which they need Israel, they need American support, but American Jews need American support. And I'm not saying that Israelis don't come first necessarily, because they have this existential threat. And when I saw President Trump, I mentioned that this was an existential threat. America forgot about that threat already. And I know you know it is an existential threat. And it's not only just Iran, and it's all of their proxies. And now it's turning into a UN and an incredible amount of the hype, how the Muslim world was able to generate the degree of hatred towards us, and actually think that they might take over Israel. They give them the thought that they might be able to do that. That, to me, is the most challenging situation. We have to fight back, and we will win. I mean, I agree that we have to put in the right president. That's number one. But we have to have Congress stronger than it is now. Can't be one vote that's deciding everything.
Doctor, we're not nonpartisan organizations. You have to say that for the record.
I didn't say that. I didn't say anything. I didn't say anything.
Nonprofit,
I say that
nonpartisan.
the Jews are
Nonpartisan
we don't have
organization.
support.
We're
I didn't say who's not supporting this. I just said that we need support. I'm not asking if the Democrats want to come along and become.
We've invited Richie
Claudia
Torres.
Tini.
We've invited
If they
Richie
want to
Torres.
come-
I
they want to become
personally
Claudia
asked
Tini,
Richie Torres to
then
come.
Gesundheit hate, that would be the greatest situation in the world. I love when that would happen. And Rabbi Mendelevich and I discussed Scoop Jackson. Scoop Jackson was one of the greatest Democrats of all time. The problem, and Scoop Jackson, according to Rabbi Mendelevich, was more important than even President Reagan in getting Jews out of the Soviet Union. So it's not like it's a partisan issue. But if you don't have a Scoop Jackson in the Democratic Party, and you have an AOC and an Ilhan Omar and a Rashida Tlaib in the Democratic Party pushing the agenda, you are not going to have a Democratic Party that's going to be fighting anti-Semitism. Okay?
It's not the same Democratic Party that my parents belonged to years ago. If my parents were alive today, they would be Republicans. You know why? Because the Democratic Party has lost its way. And the Republican Party has always been the party of reason. And that's the emes.
Well, that's why I say I'm not trying to be partisan. I'm not trying to be partisan.
Not at all.
I'm just trying to be truthful.
We're advocating for Israel, and this is today's.
And Richie Torres would probably agree with us all, that he would say that the Republicans know what's flying on the subject of Israel. So it's not like all the Democrats are totally clueless. Anyway, I didn't mean to make this a partisan battle. Really, the champion of champions, you know, Klawdii Tini, all the way from upstate New York. She doesn't have a lot of Jews upstate. She told me that a lot. You know, like what? I don't know how many Jews are up there. Maybe 1,000. My son almost went to Syracuse Medical School. So, okay, he almost made it into your district. He did get accepted there. But she does it because it's from her heart, from her soul. She sees reason. She knows reason. Without further ado, Klawdii Tini, Congresswoman.
My dad's best friend. My dad was a Supreme Court judge in New York, and he always had all his best friends were always the Jewish doctors and dentists in town. So, and lawyers. My dad.
He was actually on the Court of Appeals.
No, he was never on the Court of Appeals. No, he was always.
It was a major decision by.
He did a lot of major decisions, but he did it as a Supreme Court justice.
Oh, wow.
He was he wouldn't play the game to get to the Court of Appeals. But anyway, but I just want to it's sort of I honestly this is just become something that years ago when I was a college student, you know, you'd see all these things happening, and I graduated in 1983 from Colgate University, and I'd see all these things happening about what's going on in the Middle East and Israel, and I always felt like, you know, it kind of made your eyes glaze over. And so it's like, you know, one day I finally said, you know, I really need to know what's going on. I think I'm going to just like invest some time and learn about this topic. And it was really, it's just such a fascinating journey through history and history of the world, history of America. And I remember back in the days of things, you know, my parents used to talk about, which is not talked about a lot. And one of the first people who ever really inspired me was a woman named Helen Sperling. She was a Holocaust survivor, and her son actually went to high school with me. And she was a little tiny person. She was probably about 4'11", and her parents were both killed in the Holocaust. She and her brother were able to find a way into Germany and eventually got themselves into the United States and eventually into my small town. And Helen decided to devote her life to telling the story of the Holocaust. And she happened to live in my town, and she went to every high school, every college, every young, you know, she used to go to Boys State and everything. And I remember her telling the story of the Holocaust, a little tiny, interesting woman, and I just thought, it was incredibly moving, and something that I don't think anybody does anymore. And I think a lot of people, the time has passed. I mean, even young people don't realize that, you know, how dangerous and terrible 2001 was. We don't, like a lot of people don't remember it. I'll never forget that day. And so my son, who is 30 years younger than I am, so he's about 32, came home from school one day and he said, "Mom, I met this amazing woman. She came to my class. I think he was in 5th grade, and she was very small. Her name was Mrs. Sperling, and she told me all about the Holocaust." So 30 years after I had heard this story, and he said it was so terrible what I heard about her family that I went up and gave her a hug. And I just felt so, I mean, as a mom, as you can imagine, I was so grateful that my son was someone that was so compassionate. And I followed Helen and her son Paul, of course, is a friend of mine, throughout her years. And then one day I was running for the state legislature, and I went to Boys State, which you all know is a nice little, you know, kind of a week-long event in our region. And I went up to talk, and who was in front of me in the speech but Helen Sperling, who I hadn't seen in many years. And it was hard to follow Helen Sperling. I mean, everybody is in tears. I mean, the story is incredible. No one can believe it can be real. And Helen, though, I will say, had gotten a little bit, this is 2012, and I was a state legislator, and she'd gotten pretty clever. And she said, "Oh, it's so good to see you." She knew my parents. You know, she was very elderly at this point. And I noticed she'd gotten a little bit of marketing flair. And so in 2012, she gave me this very delicate little plastic band that was her mantra, and it was, "Thou shall not be a bystander." And that's one thing that she always stood for as a Holocaust survivor, and she always tried to instill in all the young people that she knew about standing up for when you see something's wrong and you know that it's wrong, and standing up for it. And so Helen, I don't know if there are any more. I hope that her son may someday replace this, but I always worry. I wear it every day, and I've worn it every day since 2012, because it means so much to me what she explained and what we went through And as I continued to study Israel, I always wanted to go. And I finally had that opportunity to go to Israel in 2017 with the AIPAC trip, you know, with the Republicans. I was a new member of Congress. It's a freshman trip. You go and do all these, you know, cool things. You go to Israel, and it changed my life. It was an amazing trip just to be able to be there and to learn so much and to be part of this whole amazing journey. And all these people in my life who I, you know, realized have been survivors, and I was kind of obsessed with Holocaust survivor stories because I think they're among the most amazing in our modern era. And then in 2019, I don't know, it was Jonathan. I don't know who got I started on this, but I got a phone call and said, "Do you want to go to Israel?" I'd lost my election in 2018. I've always been a strong
I think it was me.
It was definitely
Republican
Jonathan.
conservative.
It was definitely Jonathan.
And I didn't even know if I was going to run again, to be honest. And they said, "You have an opportunity. We'd love to have you go to
You went
Israel."
with Nick Langworthy, right?
Yeah, it was 2019. And they said, "You can go on this trip, and you got to call this guy, Dr. Frager, and you're going to go on this." And it's a different trip than AIPAC. It's a different trip.
It's much different.
You get to see some things that you might not get to see. So,
James, did you hear what she said?
so I signed up for the trip, and it was everything that it was billed to be, and even more. And having the opportunity to go with Dr. Frager and see things that we did not get to see.
I think was Israel your guide?
Yes.
He was there. He was there.
He was there.
You were 20
Nachman was
pounds
our
less,
guide.
though.
Nachman
20 pounds
Mostowski
less.
was our guide. Nachman was our guide. I love Nachman.
I was still Nachman at the Prime Minister's office.
So Mike Huckabee was also on the trip, and the reason I mention this, so there are like every time. So I've only been to Israel twice. I've gotten opportunities to go many more times. I have no. But the reason this was so significant and what impacted me is, you know, I've heard about the West Bank and all this stuff and all this propaganda that comes from that you hear about as a non-Jewish person. So Dr. Frager takes us on this amazing trip. We fly all through the night, and you know, I'm sitting in like Delta Comfort, so I didn't even get to like recline. I was with Nick Langworthy. I tried to take the Ambien, the whole thing, but so we land, and you know, we have time change and everything. And a bunch of people bailed out on this. Remember this, Dr. Frager?
I remember.
So we said we're going to go, and we're going to go to Judea. We're going to see Jeremy Gimbel's farm and his retreat that he's building, and you can sit and watch where the Psalms or palms, as Joe Biden calls them, the palms were. Okay. And you can see the Dead Sea on one side and Jerusalem on the other, and it's just this incredible thing that they were putting together. And Mike Huckabee was with us, and of course there was a band. And we went down, and we sat there, and even though I was exhausted, it was like a life-changing experience to sit there in Judea. Of course, you know, you go through with the signs that say, you know, you could be shot and all that other stuff, and the zone you're in. And we went in there, and Mike Huckabee got up on his guitar, and he was tired. He'd been on the plane and everything. But it was the most incredible experience to sit there and see people celebrating life and celebrating really the homeland of Judaism and the homeland of the Jewish people. And so after that, I mean, we did a lot of really cool things that we didn't get to see on the AIPAC trip. And I don't want to disparage AIPAC, it was a wonderful trip, but this was just a little bit, couple new things, going to that simulated city near Gaza, which now I look back and think how interesting that was. Just some of the really cool things about the trip, and you know, having Nachman as our guide. Kidding. But so I look back on that, and I was like, I've always been inspired by a number of people. My former legislative director, a guy named Chaim Engelman, who some of you know Chaim. I think you know. Did you know Chaim, Jonathan? I don't know if you know Chaim.
No.
His father, John Engelman's like, I think, one of the greatest human beings ever on the planet Earth. So I'll just tell you a little bit why they inspired me so much. Chaim was my intern when I was running for Congress in 2016. He was a Binghamton University student and Orthodox, and Chaim came and worked for me and stayed with me all through, and then after I lost and I came back in my glorious 109 vote victory, Chaim came back. He went to Marco Rubio, came back and worked for me. He is now graduating in a couple months from Kellogg Business School in Northwestern. But the family has remained very close, and I just want to tell you why I think his father, and Chaim's a wonderful guy. His son is basically my grandson right now. But Chaim's father, I'll tell you something he did that was so amazing. After October 7th, he was going to come home because obviously they were concerned for their safety. But he stayed John Engelman. He stayed in Israel, and he's still there now. And what he did after October 7th is he attended every funeral for every IDF member and military person who was killed who didn't have a family member. And he went and attended them and prayed for them at every one of their funerals, in harm's way, I might add. And so he's still doing that, has not come home, has not been home with his family. And I just, you know, when you see the passion and the biblical nature and the beauty of a human being like that, and how much that means to him, and how wonderful expression of the faith, it gives me inspiration. So on the Judea and Samaria bill, I got tired of hearing the West Bank, the West Bank, the West Bank, and I just said, you know, why are we calling it the West Bank? We should actually make anything that's made in America, say made in America, or made in Judea and Samaria. Why are we saying made in the West Bank? So last year, my new legislative director, Zev Siegfried, who's also Jewish, he's not Orthodox, said, well, that sounds like a great bill, let's do that. So last year, we can't cook this up in the summer. And I was gonna put it out last year, and he was like, oh, well, everyone's like, you're gonna be so divisive if you put that out. And I was like, it's the truth. What's wrong with the truth? And so then October 7th hit, and we just didn't want to put salt in the wound. And then finally, after all these Palestinian protesters, these astroturfers, these vile people that were attacking the professor in Cornell, which I don't represent, but I circle, came out with all these vile attacks against Israel, glorifying this horrible murder of the Jewish people on October 7th. I was like, fine, put this bill out. So we came out with a bill, among many other, and as Brian cited, thank you, Brian, for all your support. Obviously, we were really working on this Iranian issue for a long time, and you know, obviously they're causing a lot of problems. But we try to do as much as we can on the Jewish issue, on the Israeli issue, as we can, from the truth perspective. Not because I'm ideological, I'm not Jewish, but I think that it's so important that we tell the truth, and we understand the importance, the foundational importance of Judaism with Christianity, and the attempts by this modern day era. We talk about Marxism. I was just talking with the rabbi here. The Marxism that is trying to eliminate the Judeo-Christian ethic, and so that's one of the things that inspires me. But it's just these wonderful people that I meet along the way who really embody the beauty of the Jewish faith and the Christian faith, and that's why I just want to keep telling the truth. And it's really about telling the truth. It's not about, you know, being it's not anything else. I just find it so fascinating. The Holy Land is so important. And it's funny, I go to like these events, and I know you all know this. If you go to an event and you go to a room full of Christians, if you mention Israel, those are the loudest cheers in the room, always. It's always such a fascinating, it's like, wow, it's you know, they know that this is the Holy Land for them as well. And so I just find that, you know, everything we can do to preserve and protect the truth, which is really all this is about. It's not anything but the truth. And that's why I just feel like, why can't we just lay bare the honesty about Judea and Samaria, and among other bills that I put forward? And that's the reason we do that. If we don't start telling the truth, and we're going to cower, and we're going to be canceled, which is what's happening on the other side, we're never going to be able to burst through and get to the other side and understand that the truth is there, and we need to fight for the truth. Because I agree with Dr. Frager. I think we're in a very fragile situation in the Middle East. Hamas and these operatives, with there's so many hundreds of millions, probably billions of dollars that have been spent on propaganda in the United States, whether it's Students for Justice in Palestine and these other groups, are spreading this disinformation all over our country, all over our young students, and everywhere you turn, that you've got these people protesting that are just, it's okay if you slaughter Jewish people on October 7th. But now, there's somehow, it's okay if the Jewish people, 1,200 IDF members have been killed. You know, Jewish people fighting to protect their homeland. And that's okay. And so I think that we have to continue to talk about the truth. And that's the main reason I came out with a bill. I'm going to continue to stand up for Israel. I'm going to continue to stand up for the Jewish people.
Your plate is getting cold. Do you want to continue?
No, fine, whatever. And I'm happy to take any questions. I mean, we can. Yeah, go ahead. No, that's fine. I'm fine. No, I just.
Your plate will become cold.
You're not 62. Come on.
63.
You look
I
very
just turned 63 in February.
Whoa.
It's called Derma Blend. Derma Blend. It's cheating.
You want to first eat and then we'll ask
Yeah.
questions?
Ask me a question. I mean,
Sure.
I don't mind if you want to ask me a question. Fine. I mean,
We'll do it from your seat. I want to eat a little bit.
But I just want to say thank you so much. I'm honored to receive the award. I'm going to continue to fight. I'm going to continue to tell the truth, and I think that's all we can do, and that's ultimately. Hate to quote John, but that's ultimately what's going to set us free. Thank you.
That was a good idea.
Okay, we're done. We'll eat a little bit and then we'll have questions.
Thank you. One of the best of the best.
Thank you so much.
You have a fork and a knife?
I'm good, yeah.
Yeah,
I
good.
want to say thank you so much to you for all that you do for both America, the American-Israel relationship, and just for the good of all of us. So thank you so much that you have chosen to do that. So I just wanted to ask you about the aid package. It passed the Senate, and it's now in the House waiting. And I just wanted to get your knowledge about what's going on, and will we actually be able to get the aid for Israel's sake?
Okay, so that's a great question. So when this October 7th tragedy occurred, or slaughter occurred, I put out an aid package right away. And actually the speaker didn't realize that I already had a bill, and I asked them, can we bring this bill to the floor? But they did another bill, and they coupled it with, I think it was, they tried to do a pay for with texting. And a lot of people criticized him for that, but I know that the right wing were going after him, so that's why he did it. Right now, I mean, obviously I fully support it, and I think most of us do. I don't know who wouldn't on our side. Maybe a Tom Massey or somebody like that who always opposes everything that's any foreign aid. So that would be troubling if we got there. But I'm sure there's a lot of Democrats that would support it. So I think that that's something would go. The big challenge that we have now, which is inexplicable, is that if this aid package to Israel gets coupled with the Ukrainian aid, and so there's this side of the Republican Party led mostly by Marjorie Taylor Greene, Tucker Carlson, and others, who's leading the charge that we shouldn't give any, not one penny for Ukraine. And if they try to link the Ukraine funding, which the Democrats will probably try to do to trap us, to Israel, that would be a problem. I mean, I'd still vote for any aid that we're going to do to Israel, and I also think that the problem with Ukraine is a lot of Russian disinformation, a lot of understanding of. I went to Jesianka, which is the base in Poland, right next to Ukraine, where all of the operations are that are controlling all our issues in Ukraine. So that I mean, just from a procedural standpoint, it seems to me that would be. That could be a problem, but if Israel aid is taken alone, I think there wouldn't be any problem getting the Israel aid passed. But we'll see. This is going to be a dynamic week. Next week we go back into session. So I proposed the original Israel aid bill that we did. Zev and I put it together right away. And actually, as I said, the speaker didn't realize that we had put that out there. We didn't do it. It was no strings attached. We didn't attach any pay-fors for the tax money. The Ukrainian situation is complicated, and we were talking about that a little bit here. I worry about a World War II scenario, and that we aren't being cognizant of what happened. Churchill always said the United States gets in eventually after everything else has been exhausted. Maybe too late, cost even more lives. But from my view, when I went to Poland, the country that's taking the most casualties and the most refugees is Poland. They're one of our best, allies in Europe right now. They industrialized. They supported their all of the strategy when it comes to energy. So they tried to distance themselves from being dependent on Russia, unlike a lot of EU countries. So they've taken a lot of the money that would be the so-called Ukraine funding would go to be replenishing American supplies already. So I didn't mention this early on. My son is actually a Marine, and he was a logistics officer in the Marine Corps. So he's a pretty smart kid. Someday I'd love to take him to Israel. That's a dream of his. But actually, when I wanted to take him to Israel as my +1 in 17, he was deployed. He was in Iraq. So we couldn't go.
Short flight.
Yeah, well, I know. Unfortunately, no, not when you're in the command center. So, but anyway, he's a Naval Academy graduate, computer science, IT major. He started his master's in AI until he got deployed, and then he did 8 years as a logistics officer. Turned down Navy pilot. I just want to be honest, like I said, what are you doing? You're crazy. And then one day he called and said, I think I should have taken the pilot option. I'm like, don't even tell me that. I don't want to hear it. But he really believes in that, and he's a real historian. Loves history. I thank my parents for that, being people who were. My son spent a lot of time across the street at my parents' house. So, but this situation in Ukraine is, if we let Putin win, it's going to be a domino effect. So one thing I didn't mention about my history is. When I got out of college, I spent a year working at the Yugoslav consulate, which is here in New York. So I worked for the country of Yugoslavia. I didn't work for an American country. I was the only American employee. And I worked on the Olympics in Sarajevo, Yugoslavia. And then, actually, this is really interesting, another tie to the Jewish community, why I am such a fan and so deeply believe in the Judeo-Christian ethic, especially the Jewish community that I have in my community, which is very small, Dr. Frager, as you pointed out, but very important, is when the war in Bosnia was occurring, and I worked in the consulate, I had friends in every part of the former Yugoslavia. I worked for the Jewish Community Center where my son was going there as an after-school student. And we worked with the Jewish Community Center to bring Muslim Bosnian refugees to the United States to give them sanctuary because of what was happening, the ethnic cleansing and that type of thing. So it's a really complicated situation, but the Jewish Community Center was instrumental in making that happen in our community, and they were up until that asylum category closed off. But we have a very large population, but it was their solidarity with what was happening to the people in Bosnia that brought them all together. So ironically, you come to my community now, and I've gone door to door, and I'll run into a Bosnian family, and they're usually independents and Democrats, unfortunately. And I'll say, hey, do you want to sign for this guy? And they're like, is he Jewish? And I'll say, I don't know. His name is Meyer. I said, I don't know if he's Jewish or German or Swiss or Austrian. I don't really know. Yeah, and they'll say, if he's Jewish, I won't sign because I hate Jews. And these are the very people who owe their life and their asylum to the Jewish people from our community. So this is where I was just stunned by this sentiment. And I think, again, this is all this kind of propaganda. And I think the Russians are spending a lot of money, Hamas is spending a lot of money to manipulate our populations. And that's, unfortunately, I hope that we can pass that bill if it comes to the floor. I worry someone like a Marjorie Taylor Greene, who has threatened to motion to vacate the chair, if Speaker Johnson brings anything that looks like Ukraine funding to the floor, she will pull the trigger. And I worry that we will see, losses. I mean, we'll lose the House, probably lose the Senate, probably lose the presidency, and it's going to be a devastating move for the American people. I'm hoping someone with common sense will get to her and realize that it's not all about monetizing your position, because when she would vacate the chair, I think I've gotten 15 fundraising emails just since that time. And I like Marjorie. I think she's interesting, trying to do things. But like when you monetize your position, you undermine what you're doing when you're supposed to be representing the people of this country. And especially if it's going to, in the event, hurt Israel. And we know that funding needs to come forward. And so hopefully, I don't know. I mean, we'll see. Next week is when all this is kind of. Well, it's going to be a big week next week and the week after. So.
Thank you so much.
Bob, let me just start. We have a call yesterday from someone from the other side, and they heard a senator from the other side. They heard that there is a movement to split the three. Ukraine is in the House. Ukraine, Israel, and have you seen anything?
I know that there's factions on the floor that way. But I'm not sure how it will shake out because I don't know what will ultimately come to the floor. I'd have to find out from the speaker himself, who's, by the way, a very good friend of mine. We've been good friends since my first year.
And the second thing you mentioned
What was it?
This propaganda spreading. There's a bill, as you know, about Texas. You know, we actually spent quite a bit of time working on this. We did a study. We visited every member of the Congress Committee on the House level, every single member of the Congress Committee. That's where all the propaganda is coming from. It is vile beyond any imagination. And not only citizens, if China's government chooses, they can have riots in the streets next week in support of communist China. Because they can play with the outcomes at that level. They control our kids.
No, I know, that's why
They control our kids.
So it's interesting how that thing, right now, and I know it's bill, there's a way that we there's a way that we have
I know that the whole idea, we're all annoyed and disturbed by the humanitarian aid problems in Gaza, for example, the innocent civilians that are losing their lives. But I always read those stories, and I wonder to myself, America has allocated $150 billion to Ukraine. I know I read a few times about errant Ukrainian missiles that were provided by the United States that killed Russian women and children. And there's not a word, or does anybody in Washington express concern about innocent civilians anywhere else other than Gaza?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, Larry. Of course, that's always the case. You know, Israel is being castigated for doing probably more than any other country ever has to avoid civilian casualties, but to protect itself in such a vulnerable situation. I love my supporter.
Yeah, well, you can share it.
Think about this. When Biden was bombing Afghanistan, they hit Americans. They hit the family and everything. You don't hear anybody castigating President Biden or running after. Look, war is terrible. War is hell. Anybody knows that. My son, thankfully, was never in the front lines. Yeah. I know that James's son is serving as a Marine too. You know, my son's in intelligence now. He went out and worked in the private sector. Now he's back, actually active duty, and he's on special assignment in an intelligence agency. And we do everything we can as Americans to avoid civilian casualties, but I don't think any other country in the world is in such a unique position as Israel, with so many enemies and such a volatile powder keg of a situation when you look at the different countries in that area. And the really colossal mistakes that are being made by the Biden administration, although I think they're designed to actually hurt Israel in a way, even though I'm not sure that's what their mission is. I'm not sure what their mission is, to be honest with you.
Mission is to get reelected.
But it's just, to appease some Hamas supporters who don't even know they're Hamas supporters, and this pro-Palestinian movement, which is such an astroturf movement. All of a sudden, all these kids have got Palestinian flags and beautifully made signs just like that overnight. This is all, obviously astroturfed. So it's totally unfair what's happening to Israel. And I know Israel apologized immediately. They took care of it. If you're on Twitter, and I know Ari is, God love our former Ambassador Friedman. He is a warrior. And I know Ryan is too, but I have him on notifications.
I like Ambassador Friedman.
I love Ambassador Friedman. I'm on notifications. Every time he tweets, I'm like, boom, I'm right in there. It's like he is doing such a yeoman's work on defending Israel and the people. Look, it is such a. I'll tell you, like the first trip. So I know just the APAC trip. I'll just say the first thing they do is take us to tour the Iron Dome. And so that's the first thing. You get off the plane, you go to the Iron Dome, you're like, oh my God, like can I go jogging outside the King David's hotel? Am I gonna die? They make me so nervous. But yet everybody we met was so joyful and happy. The people in Israel living free because we have these amazing systems in place, and because of the eternal optimism of the people there that want to be part of this world as the saviors of the world. And I think that's what I don't think. Nobody in Israel wants to see anyone get hurt, but unfortunately they're getting slaughtered and killed in such a brutal and disgusting way. I spent a day, it was like a 3-hour afternoon with a number of people from the October 7th atrocities, and these were people whose family members had been raped and they were all women by the Hamas, and they had video footage. I mean, it was sickening, and I didn't want to watch it. It's a 45-minute tape. I got through 20 minutes of it, and I was trying to even look at the 20 minutes. I mean, it was just, it's horrific. And for anyone to say that we're, and the lengths that Israel goes to make sure that we don't hit civilian casualties, no other country in the world really goes to that effort. And they're not getting credit for it. And why isn't the Biden administration championing that? Like talking about this great ally, the best ally, the only democracy, the innovators of the Middle East. Why are we talking about that? And
another problem is we're losing IDF soldiers
exactly.
because they're being fearful. Nobody cares about that.
Except
every
my friend
day.
John Lengelman is going to all their funerals.
Every day you see another soldier, and it isn't that if they took a little bomb and threw it like America did, they wouldn't lose all these 20-year-olds, 30-year-olds, 40-year-olds.
So, my friend John Engelman, his two of his sons are dual citizens. They're in IDF. He's literally going to every funeral he can for IDF soldiers. He's over there in harm's way. He's in his late 60s. His wife and their grandchildren are home.
My nephew ended up being head of Zaka now because he was there when the terrorists were running around in Gaza, and he's the only one that spoke English. So he ended up speaking for UN, and now he's all over the world. But is he the same person he was? No. The things he saw there, he'll never unsee.
He'll never unsee. I know. It's terrible. I mean, John sent me a message the other day. He always sends me like a message of peace or prayer, and he's actually helping an Israeli olive harvester. He's helping them pick the olives and take the olives out of the tree. It's maybe like 50 miles from Gaza. That's how dangerous he is. But he's doing it because he's helping these people, and they're providing food and resources. And oh, by the way, creating that fort over on the sea is the worst thing. I mean, it's just a disaster. That would be just, it's